Saren sat quietly in the dark, cold cell. She was an alien, a warrior from a distant world, and today would be the last day of her life. The metal walls of the prison echoed with the sounds of distant footsteps, but Saren barely noticed. Her thoughts were heavy, filled with the knowledge of her fate. She had been captured by the empire she once fought against. The very people she had tried to protect now saw her as a traitor. Her breathing was slow, measured. There was no hope left. The only thing left was to face death with honor, the way her people had always done. She had never imagined that a human would be the one to bring her death. But that's what she had been told. A human soldier would come, give the order, and then it would be over. She had prepared herself for this moment, but now that it was here, there was a strange sense of calmness in her heart. Saren's thoughts drifted back to the days before her capture. She had been part of a small group of rebels, fighting against a tyrannical empire that oppressed her people. She had been strong, brave, and fearless, but now she was alone. The rebellion had fallen, and her comrades were dead or captured. It had been only a matter of time before they found her. She had failed, and now she would die. But even in the face of death, there was no fear. She had seen death before, both in battle and on the faces of those who had fought beside her. It was just another part of life, a warrior's life. Her people didn't fear death. They welcomed it. It was an honor to die in battle, an honor that was taken from her when she was betrayed by those she had trusted. The sound of boots on the floor grew louder, pulling her from her thoughts. Saren raised her head slightly, her sharp alien eyes narrowing as she saw a shadow move past the bars of her cell. She could hear the soft hum of technology as the door to her cell slowly opened. In the doorway stood a human, a soldier in the uniform of the empire that had condemned her. His face was hard, but there was something in his eyes that caught her attention. He was tall, with dark hair and a serious expression. He looked at her without speaking, his eyes scanning her for a moment before he stepped forward. Saren stood, her body still sore from the fight that had led to her capture. She didn't know whether to expect mercy or cruelty from him. She had heard stories of humans, of their strange ways, and their even stranger sense of justice, but she had never met one before. "Are you the one they sent to kill me?" Saren's voice was calm, though it carried the weight of her situation. She had no anger left to give, only a strange, bitter acceptance. The human soldier didn't answer immediately. He only studied her for a long moment, his face unreadable. For a brief moment, Saren wondered if he was hesitating, if he would not be able to carry out the order. But that was a foolish thought. She had seen enough to know that no one showed mercy in this war. Not to her kind. Not to anyone who stood against the empire. Finally, the soldier spoke, his voice deep and even. "I'm not here to kill you. Not yet, at least." Saren's heart skipped a beat. She could hardly believe what she had heard. Not here to kill me. Then why was he here? Why? She asked, her voice filled with confusion. "I've already been sentenced. Death is the only thing left." The soldier took a step closer, his eyes locked on hers. "I don't think death is the answer for you. You deserve more than that." Saren tilted her head slightly, her alien features sharp and proud. She had never been one to back down, but this human was different. She had expected a quick execution, not this strange conversation. It felt like an insult to her people's traditions, yet there was something in his words, in his gaze, that made her pause. She crossed her arms, a defensive posture. "You don't understand, my people. Death is the greatest honor. It is what we are prepared for. Why should I live when my people are gone? Why should I go on when I failed them?" The human soldier stood silent for a long moment, his expression softening. Then he spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "Because you deserve to live, because not all fights end in death. And I'm not here to take your life. I'm here to stop you from throwing it away." Saren's eyes narrowed as she studied him, trying to read his true intentions. His words didn't make sense, And yet there was something about his calm demeanor that made her question everything. She had been prepared for death, for the end. But now, this soldier had thrown that all into question. Why? She asked again, her voice barely a whisper. The soldier took another step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Because sometimes death isn't the answer. Sometimes survival is the hardest choice. Siren was silent, her mind racing. She had been ready to die. But now, faced with this human who seemed to see something in her that she could not see herself, she felt uncertain. Could she really go on? Should she even try? For the first time in what felt like forever, Siren found herself wondering if there was more to life than what she had been taught. The human soldier extended a hand toward her. Come with me. I'll help you. There's more than just death waiting for you. Siren looked at his outstretched hand. She didn't know what to say, what to do, but something in her stirred, something deep inside her heart. Perhaps this wasn't the end after all. The human who won't kill. Siren stared at the human's outstretched hand, her mind racing. Every part of her told her to refuse, to turn away from this strange offer. She had been trained to face death with pride, to never show weakness. Yet something about the soldier's eyes, the calm in his voice, made her hesitate. She had never expected this. Mercy from a human. But why? The human's hand lingered in the air, waiting. His expression remained calm, unchanging, but there was something in his gaze that made Siren feel uneasy. It wasn't pity. No, it was something else, something warmer, more genuine. His offer was not the cruel mercy of an enemy, but the quiet promise of a second chance. She didn't know if she could trust it. Why are you helping me? Siren finally spoke, her voice full of suspicion. I'm an enemy to your people. I'm a traitor. The soldier's eyes softened, and for a moment, he seemed to think before answering. He pulled his hand back slowly, then crossed his arms, still looking at her as if he were studying her. You're not my enemy, Siren. Not anymore. Siren blinked, confused. You don't even know me. How can you say that? The soldier sighed, and his shoulders relaxed slightly. I don't need to know you to understand that what's happening to you isn't right. I've seen enough suffering to know the difference between an enemy and a person who's been pushed too far. Siren's eyes narrowed. And you think I've been pushed too far? Her voice was sharp now, like a blade ready to cut through the air. I am a warrior, not a victim. I've fought for my people. I failed, yes, but that doesn't make me weak. The human shook his head slowly, his expression never changing. I didn't say you were weak, but you're more than just a warrior. You're more than just your past mistakes, and I'm not here to judge you. For the first time since they'd met, Siren felt a flicker of something she hadn't expected. It wasn't pity, but something else, perhaps respect. She had spent so much of her life focused on the battlefield, on fighting, on surviving. But this human was seeing her, not as an enemy, but as something more. It was confusing, and it made her feel vulnerable in a way she didn't like. She looked down at the floor, trying to push away the emotions she was feeling. Why should I trust him? She thought. Why should I trust anyone anymore? But the human wasn't giving up. He didn't seem bothered by her silence. Instead, he spoke again, his tone firm yet gentle. I don't want to kill you, Siren. I don't believe in killing for the sake of it. Not anymore. And I don't think you want to die either. You're a fighter. I can see that. But there's more to living than fighting. Siren clenched her fists, the sharp metal of her alien armor biting into her skin. You don't understand, she said, her voice cold again. You don't know what it's like. I have nothing left. My people are gone. My cause is lost. There's nothing left for me to fight for. I would rather die than live with this shame. The soldier took a step closer, but not too close. He seemed to be giving her space, as if he respected her need for distance. I understand more than you think, he said softly. I've lost too, Siren. My people are at war too. But I still fight, not because I want to, but because I believe in something. I believe in peace, and I believe you have the strength to choose that. To choose life, even when everything tells you to give up." Saren shook her head, fighting the wave of emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. Peace. She had never believed in peace. In her world, peace was just another lie, another way to keep people in chains. How could he believe in such a thing? But there was something in his voice, something that made her question everything she had ever known. "Why do you care?" she asked again, her voice softer now, though still tinged with doubt. "Why do you care about someone like me? I'm not like you." The human looked at her for a long time, and Saren could see the weight of his answer before he even spoke. "I care because I believe everyone deserves a chance. Even you, Saren, especially you." There was silence between them for a moment. Saren stared at him, her heart racing. She wanted to yell at him, tell him to leave her alone, to stop pretending like he could change anything. But she didn't. Because, deep down, she knew that what he was saying was true. Maybe she didn't want to die. Maybe, just maybe, she was tired of fighting for a cause that was already lost. Saren stood still, her eyes fixed on the soldier, her mind still in turmoil. For the first time, she began to wonder if there was something more to life than just fighting and dying. Perhaps there was something to this strange human's words. The soldier stepped back slightly, giving her space, and Saren noticed the change in him. He wasn't pushing her. He wasn't demanding anything from her. He was waiting, letting her decide. And for the first time in a long while, Saren found herself thinking about what it would mean to truly live. Not for her people, not for honor, but for herself. "You said you wouldn't kill me," she said quietly, looking him in the eye. "What are you going to do with me then?" The soldier smiled, his eyes warm. "I'm going to give you a choice, a chance to live. What you do with that chance is up to you." Attack. Saren stood still, staring at the human soldier, her mind whirling with questions. His words had struck a chord within her, yet doubt still gnawed at her heart. Could she trust him? Could she trust anyone? Her life had been filled with betrayal and loss. It felt unnatural to believe in something or someone again. She wanted to say something, anything, but before she could speak, the sharp sound of alarms pierced the air. The soldier's expression changed in an instant, his calm demeanor replaced with urgency. He moved quickly, stepping toward the door of the cell and placing a hand on the control panel beside it. "Stay here," he said, his voice low and serious. "Stay out of sight." Saren didn't need to be told twice. She could hear the loud thud of boots approaching, the sound of weapons being readied. It wasn't just one soldier. It was a full assault. She could feel the tension rising in the air, the danger closing in around them. The soldier turned back to look at her one last time before stepping out of the cell. "I'll be right back. Just stay hidden." As the door slammed shut behind him, Saren was left alone, her heart pounding in her chest. The sounds of the soldiers' voices grew louder, more frantic. She pressed herself against the cold, metal wall, trying to stay silent, to stay out of their view. There was no way she could fight them all. At least not without help. The human soldier had given her a chance to live. But now, it seemed like the Empire's forces had found them. Her life might end before she even had the chance to figure out what to do with it. She peeked cautiously around the corner of the cell, watching as a group of armed soldiers marched past. They were too focused on their mission to notice her, but Saren's heart still raced with the fear that one of them would spot her. "What should I do?" she thought, panic rising within her chest. "I can't let them find me. If they capture me again, it's over." Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the facility, shaking the ground beneath her feet. The walls trembled, and dust filled the air. Saren quickly covered her face, trying to shield herself from the debris. The sound of screaming voices echoed through the halls as chaos erupted. She didn't know what was happening, but it didn't matter. She couldn't stay there. The soldiers would be coming in full force now, and she had to find a way to escape. As the dust began to settle, Saren moved swiftly and silently, her instincts as a warrior kicking in. She crouched low and moved quickly, staying in the shadows, keeping her footsteps light. She had been in worse situations before. She could handle this. After a few moments of tense silence, the sounds of combat reached her ears. The human soldier had been right. The facility was under attack. But by who? And why now? Siren peeked around the corner of a hallway and saw a group of rebels charging down the corridor, weapons raised. They were dressed in black, with their faces covered. She couldn't tell who they were at first, but one of them was carrying a familiar weapon, the same kind the human soldier had used earlier. Her eyes widened. The rebels. It took only a moment for her to recognize the figure leading them. It was a woman, tall and fierce, with sharp eyes and a determination that mirrored Siren's own. It's her, Siren realized. The leader of the rebellion. The leader of the rebels turned quickly, noticing Siren standing at the edge of the hallway. Her eyes flashed with recognition, and she motioned for Siren to come forward. "Move it," she shouted, her voice fierce. "We don't have much time." Siren hesitated for a moment, the confusion still swirling in her mind. She had been fighting these rebels only days ago. They had been the ones to capture her. They had been the ones to betray her. But now, they were offering a way out, a chance to survive. Siren's instincts screamed at her to run, to fight, to protect herself. But something held her back. She wasn't sure why, but she trusted the human soldier more than she trusted these rebels. She had seen him fight with honor. She had seen the kindness in his eyes. Before she could make a decision, the loud crash of doors slamming open filled the hallway. More soldiers were coming, guns aimed, ready for action. The rebels turned, and the firefight began. Siren ducked down, moving quickly through the maze of hallways, trying to stay out of the line of fire. She didn't want to get caught in the middle of this war, but she knew she had to act fast. She had to make a choice. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm. She spun around, ready to strike, but stopped when she saw the familiar face of the human soldier. He was panting, sweat dripping down his forehead, his expression hard but determined. "Come on," he shouted. "We need to move, now." Siren didn't have time to question him. She followed his lead, running as fast as she could down the darkened hallway. The sounds of gunfire filled the air, and the walls shook as explosions rang out nearby. The human soldier led her through narrow passages, his hand gripping hers as he pulled her along. They rounded a corner and came to a stop in front of a small door. The soldier pushed it open and motioned for Siren to go inside. "Get in," he commanded. Siren hesitated for a moment, then followed his orders. As soon as she stepped inside, the soldier closed the door behind them, sealing them both inside. "We're safe for now," the soldier said, his voice calmer now. "But we need to move quickly. The rebels aren't the only ones after you. The Empire is closing in." Siren's mind was spinning. She had been thrown into a new kind of chaos, one that felt like it might tear her apart. She didn't know what would happen next, but she did know one thing. This human soldier had saved her life again. For now, she would trust him. But how long would that last? Running for their lives. Siren's heart raced as she and the human soldier ran down the darkened hallways, their footsteps echoing in the silence between explosions. The walls shook with each blast, and the sound of gunfire was deafening. She had no idea where they were going, only that they couldn't stay here. The human soldier kept his grip on her arm, pulling her along with a strength that surprised her. His movements were fast, calculated, as if he had done this before. The soldier didn't look back. He knew the dangers of this place far too well. But Siren, her mind still reeling from the sudden attack, couldn't help but glance over her shoulder every few seconds. The facility was collapsing around them, debris falling from the ceiling, the sound of chaos closing in on every side. She had been in many battles, many close calls, but nothing like this. It felt as if the world itself was fighting against her. "We can't keep running forever," Siren said, her voice strained. breath coming in short gasps. The soldier didn't answer at first, his focus solely on the path ahead. They turned another corner, and the dim light from the emergency exit signs flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. Sirin felt the weight of each step, her mind running over the few choices she had left. They had to get out. They had to survive. "I know," the soldier finally said, his voice tight. "But right now, it's the only choice we have." Sirin looked at him, the tension in her chest tightening. Who is this man? She thought. Why is he risking everything for me? He had no reason to help her. She wasn't his ally, wasn't his friend. He should have left her behind. But instead, he was leading her through the heart of danger, through the very chaos that had been set in motion by his own people. Her head spun as they moved through the labyrinth of halls. They passed empty rooms, all filled with broken machinery and shattered glass. The lights flickered in and out, casting brief moments of light and long stretches of darkness. Every corner held danger. Every second could be their last. Sirin's eyes darted to the soldier's face. His jaw was clenched, his expression focused. He wasn't just running for his life. He was running for hers too. For some reason, he was committed to keeping her alive. But why? The more she thought about it, the more she realized how little she understood about this human. He was more than just a soldier. He was something else entirely. Ahead, a loud crash sent dust and debris flying. The door slammed open, and a group of soldiers appeared, their weapons raised. Sirin's heart skipped a beat. They were trapped. There was no way out. The human soldier acted instantly. He shoved Sirin into a side room, pressing her against the wall. "Stay quiet," he hissed, his voice barely above a whisper. Sirin nodded, holding her breath as she tried to steady her pulse. She could hear the soldiers' footsteps drawing closer, the sound of their voices filling the air. They were searching for them. Her eyes widened as she peeked through the crack in the door, watching the soldiers pass by without noticing them. She could feel the tension in the air, the cold sweat forming on her forehead. The soldiers were only feet away now. If they find us here, we're finished. The soldier next to her shifted slightly, his body tense and ready to act. But he stayed silent, watching the soldiers pass. His hand was on the weapon strapped to his side, his fingers lightly brushing the grip. He was ready for anything. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the soldiers moved on, their footsteps growing fainter as they continued down the hall. The soldier let out a slow breath, his body relaxing just a fraction. "We have to keep moving," he whispered, his voice low but urgent. "This way." He motioned for Sirin to follow him. They stepped out of the room, moving quickly but quietly, making their way down another darkened corridor. The sounds of the battle outside continued to rage, but they seemed to fade into the background as they focused on their escape. "I don't understand," Sirin said as they ran, her voice tense. "Why are you helping me? I'm your enemy. I don't deserve your help." The soldier didn't look at her, but his voice was steady as he answered. "You're not my enemy. Not anymore. You've been through enough." Sirin shook her head. "I'm not some lost soul in need of saving. I've made my own choices. Shut up," the soldier interrupted, his tone sharper than before. He stopped for a moment, his hand gripping her arm tightly. "You're not the enemy. And I'm not leaving you behind. Not now. Not ever." Sirin stared at him, surprised by the fierceness in his voice. She had seen many warriors speak with such intensity before, but none like this. There was no pride in his words, no arrogance, only determination. It was the kind of resolve she had seen in only the most loyal of soldiers. For a brief moment, she felt something stir inside her, something that felt almost like hope. It made her stomach turn, as if the very idea of hope was foreign to her. But it was there, undeniable and strange. "Why?" she whispered, almost afraid to ask the question. "Why are you doing this?" The soldier turned to her, his eyes serious. "Because I believe in you, Sirin. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know your past, but I see something in you. Something more than just a warrior. You have a choice, and I'm going to make sure you get the chance to make it." Siren's heart skipped again. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to process the words, the warmth behind them. She had never been looked at this way before. The soldier kept moving, not waiting for her to answer. "We have to hurry. They'll be back soon." They ran on, and for the first time since everything had gone wrong, Siren didn't feel alone. She didn't feel like a lost cause. She felt like she still had a chance. She just had to hold on long enough, sharing a moment. The running had slowed, and now they found themselves in a small, dimly lit room deep within the facility. The constant sound of distant explosions had faded into the background, but Siren could still feel the tension in the air, thick like smoke. Her breath was coming in quick, shallow bursts, but she was trying to steady herself. The adrenaline from running for her life was wearing off, and the weight of everything was beginning to crash down on her. She looked around the room. It was empty except for a few metal crates stacked in one corner, a small table, and some broken equipment scattered across the floor. The dim emergency lights gave off a low hum, and the air was thick with the smell of burning wires and dust. The soldier, whose name she still didn't know, leaned against the wall, his hand gripping the gun at his side. He looked as tense as she felt. His eyes scanned the room, his gaze sharp and watchful. He was always alert, always ready for what might come next. Siren wasn't sure if it was strength or fear that kept him going. Maybe it was a mix of both. "We should rest for a moment," he said finally, breaking the silence. Siren didn't argue. Her legs were sore from running, her body aching from the constant fear and movement. She sank down onto the floor, leaning her back against one of the crates. She closed her eyes for a second, trying to clear her mind, but everything felt heavy. The soldier sat across from her, leaning his back against the wall. He wasn't close, but close enough for her to feel his presence. She could hear him breathing slowly, evenly, trying to calm himself as much as she was. They sat in silence for a long time, neither of them saying anything. The sounds of the battle outside were muffled now, and for a moment, it felt like they were the only two people left in the universe. Siren wasn't used to this feeling. In her world, there had always been conflict, always someone to fight or something to lose. She had never known a moment like this. Quiet, still, with only the weight of their breathing to fill the air. She glanced at the soldier. There was something different about him. Something that didn't fit with the cold, ruthless soldiers she had fought against. His face was weary, but there was a softness in his eyes. A kindness she hadn't expected to see in someone who had lived through war. It made her wonder how many times he had been through something like this, and how many more times he would. "You're different," Siren said, breaking the silence at last. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, as if she hadn't used it in a long time. The soldier turned his head slightly, his eyes flicking to her. He didn't respond right away, as if unsure of how to answer. Then, after a moment, he spoke. "I've seen a lot," he said, his voice low and honest. "Too much, really. But I try to remember what matters. People. Kindness. I'm not here to fight just to fight. I fight because I believe in something. I believe in helping others, even if it's just for a little while." Siren felt something stir within her, a deep sense of confusion and awe. She had never heard a soldier speak like that. She had only known war and survival. She had never been shown kindness. Not like this. No one ever cared to help. She wasn't sure how to respond. She wasn't sure what to say to someone who thought this way. Instead, she asked the first thing that came to her mind. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice softer now. "I'm nothing but a warrior to you, a soldier of the Empire. Why would you risk your life for someone like me?" The soldier looked at her for a long moment. His eyes softened, and for a brief second, she saw something almost gentle. "I didn't choose this," he said quietly. "But I've learned that sometimes you have to choose what's right, not what's easy. Helping you, well, it feels right. Even if I don't know all the answers. Siren's chest tightened. She didn't understand. How could someone feel that way? How could someone trust like that? She had always been taught to keep her guard up, to never show weakness, to never trust anyone. But here, in this small, quiet room with this human soldier, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, something that made her want to believe in him, in the kindness he spoke of. Her mind was still a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She wasn't sure if she could believe him, but something in her wanted to. She wanted to believe in the chance he was offering, the chance for something different. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched out, comfortable now, as if the world had stopped spinning for a moment. It was a brief escape from the chaos outside, and Siren found herself wishing that it could last longer. But she knew they couldn't stay there forever. The battle outside was still raging, and the Empire wasn't going to stop hunting her. The human soldier knew it too. "We need to move again soon," he said, his voice a little more steady now. "The longer we stay here, the more likely we are to be found." Siren nodded, but she didn't get up right away. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to simply be present, to feel something that wasn't just fear or anger or war, to feel the strange peace that the soldier had brought, just by being there. "You know," Siren said slowly, "I don't think I've ever really had a moment like this before, a moment where I could just be." The soldier looked at her, his eyes filled with understanding. "Sometimes, it's all you need, a moment, to breathe." Siren's heart skipped at his words. She didn't know why, but for the first time in a long time, she felt something other than the constant drive for survival. A simple moment. Maybe it was all they had left. A new kind of strength. Siren's body felt heavier with every passing moment, as if the weight of everything she had endured was finally catching up with her. She had always relied on her strength, her ability to fight, to survive, to make it through the battles. But now, sitting quietly in the dark room with the soldier, she realized something. The strength she had always depended on wasn't enough anymore. She had never imagined that she would find herself in a situation like this. She had always fought alone. But the human soldier, this strange, unexpected ally, had shown her something else, something she wasn't sure she understood yet, a different kind of strength. They had spent the last few hours moving through the facility, always staying one step ahead of the soldiers who had been hunting them. The soldier was relentless, never giving up, always planning their next move. But it wasn't just his physical strength that had kept them alive. It was his quiet determination, his ability to hold on to hope even in the darkest moments. It was something Siren had never seen before, and something she couldn't quite comprehend. Now, as they crouched in another small hidden corner of the facility, Siren felt a new wave of doubt. She wasn't sure if she could keep going. The fight had drained her, and every decision felt more difficult than the last. She glanced over at the soldier, who was looking down at his weapon, checking it for the umpteenth time. His face was tired, but there was no fear in his eyes. His movements were steady, calm, as if he had been through 1,000 situations like this before. "How do you keep going?" Siren asked, her voice quieter than usual. The soldier didn't answer at first, his focus solely on the path ahead. They turned another corner, and the dim light from the emergency exit signs flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. Siren felt the weight of each step, her mind running over the few choices she had left. They had to get out. They had to survive. "I know," the soldier finally said, his voice tight. "But right now, it's the only choice we have." Siren looked at him, the tension in her chest tightening. Who is this man? She thought. Why is he risking everything for me? He had no reason to help her. She wasn't his ally, wasn't his friend. He should have left her behind. But instead, he was leading her through the heart of danger, through the very chaos that had been set in motion by his own people. Her head spun as they moved through the labyrinth of halls. They passed empty rooms, all filled with broken machinery and shattered glass. The lights flickered in and out, casting brief moments of light and long stretches of darkness. Every corner held danger. Every second could be their last. Siren's eyes darted to the soldier's face. His jaw was clenched, his expression focused. He wasn't just running for his life. He was running for hers too. For some reason, he was committed to keeping her alive. But why? The more she thought about it, the more she realized how little she understood about this human. He was more than just a soldier. He was something else entirely. Ahead, a loud crash sent dust and debris flying. The door slammed open, and a group of soldiers appeared, their weapons raised. Siren's heart skipped a beat. They were trapped. There was no way out. The human soldier acted instantly. He shoved Siren into a side room, pressing her against the wall. "Stay quiet," he hissed, his voice barely above a whisper. Siren nodded, holding her breath as she tried to steady her pulse. She could hear the soldiers' footsteps drawing closer, the sound of their voices filling the air. They were searching for them. Her eyes widened as she peeked through the crack in the door, watching the soldiers pass by without noticing them. She could feel the tension in the air, the cold sweat forming on her forehead. The soldiers were only feet away now. If they find us here, we're finished. The soldier next to her shifted slightly, his body tense and ready to act. But he stayed silent, watching the soldiers pass. His hand was on the weapon strapped to his side, his fingers lightly brushing the grip. He was ready for anything. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the soldiers moved on, their footsteps growing fainter as they continued down the hall. The soldier let out a slow breath, his body relaxing just a fraction. "We have to keep moving," he whispered, his voice low but urgent. "This way." He motioned for Siren to follow him. They stepped out of the room, moving quickly but quietly, making their way down another darkened corridor. The sounds of the battle outside continued to rage, but they seemed to fade into the background as they focused on their escape. "I don't understand," Siren said as they ran, her voice tense. "Why are you helping me? I'm your enemy. I don't deserve your help." The soldier didn't look at her, but his voice was steady as he answered. "You're not my enemy. Not anymore. You've been through enough." Siren shook her head. "I'm not some lost soul in need of saving. I've made my own choices. Shut up," the soldier interrupted, his tone sharper than before. He stopped for a moment, his hand gripping her arm tightly. "You're not the enemy. And I'm not leaving you behind. Not now. Not ever." Siren stared at him, surprised by the fierceness in his voice. She had seen many warriors speak with such intensity before, but none like this. There was no pride in his words, no arrogance, only determination. It was the kind of resolve she had seen in only the most loyal of soldiers. For a brief moment, she felt something stir inside her, something that felt almost like hope. It made her stomach turn, as if the very idea of hope was foreign to her. But it was there, undeniable and strange. "Why?" she whispered, almost afraid to ask the question. "Why are you doing this?" The soldier turned to her, his eyes serious. "Because I believe in you, Siren. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know your past, but I see something in you. Something more than just a warrior. You have a choice, and I'm going to make sure you get the chance to make it." Siren's heart skipped again. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to process the words, the warmth behind them. She had never been looked at this way before. The soldier kept moving, not waiting for her to answer. "We have to hurry. They'll be back soon." They ran on, and for the first time since everything had gone wrong, Siren didn't feel alone. She didn't feel like a lost cause. She felt like she still had a chance. She just had to hold on long enough, together forever. The hallway was silent except for the quiet hum of the emergency lights overhead. Siren and the soldier crouched in the small room, their eyes locked on the door, waiting for the sound of footsteps to fade away. Each moment felt like a lifetime, and every breath seemed to echo too loudly in the stillness. The enemy soldiers were near, too close. But the soldier beside her, calm as ever, didn't move. His hand rested on the handle of his weapon, his eyes steady, his mind working fast. He was always thinking, always planning their next step. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a protector, someone Siren had learned to rely on, even when she didn't understand everything about him. The footsteps finally disappeared down the corridor. The soldier gave her a small nod, signaling it was time to move. They couldn't stay here any longer. Siren rose to her feet, her body stiff and tired from all the running, but she didn't let it show. She had learned to push through the exhaustion. The soldier led the way again, his movements quick but quiet, like a shadow slipping through the darkness. She followed close behind, her senses on high alert, but something had changed in her. It wasn't just fear anymore. For the first time, she wasn't fighting to survive on her own. She wasn't alone. As they moved through the facility, Siren couldn't help but notice the way the soldier's presence made her feel safer. It was strange. She had always fought alone, relying only on her own skills. But now she realized how different it was. The soldier had shown her a kind of strength she had never known, a strength that came from something beyond fighting. They reached the end of the hallway and paused, listening. Siren's heart raced, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something else, something stronger. The soldier's calm confidence had somehow given her courage, and it was enough to quiet the doubts in her mind. "We're close," the soldier said, his voice low but sure. "We'll be out of here soon." Siren nodded, trying to steady her breath. They had come so far, and the end was in sight. It was hard to believe they might actually make it out alive. She glanced at the soldier, his eyes focused on the way ahead, and something inside her stirred. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. He wasn't just someone who was helping her survive. He was her strength now. They continued moving through the corridors, the sounds of battle outside growing fainter with each step. The closer they got to the exit, the more Siren felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, fear, hope. It was all tangled together inside her, and she wasn't sure which one was stronger. Finally, they reached the exit. The heavy metal door was locked, but the soldier quickly worked the controls, his fingers flying over the buttons with practiced ease. Siren watched him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never seen anyone move so quickly, so calmly. It was as if nothing in the world could shake him. And she felt it too, the steady pulse of hope, the feeling that maybe they could really do this. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Outside, the sun was rising, casting a warm golden light over the horizon. For the first time in days, Siren felt a true sense of freedom. They had made it. The soldier turned to her, his face lit by the soft light. His eyes were no longer just the eyes of a soldier. They were the eyes of someone who had shared this journey with her, someone who had fought beside her and protected her when she thought there was no hope left. "It's over," he said, a rare smile playing on his lips. "We made it." Siren couldn't believe it. After all the fighting, all the pain, they had made it out. She felt a weight lift off her chest. But there was something else too, something deeper. She looked at the soldier, her heart racing for a different reason now. It wasn't fear. It wasn't uncertainty. It was something she had never allowed herself to feel before. Trust, and something more. She stepped closer to him, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you. For everything." The soldier's smile softened, his eyes filled with something that looked almost like tenderness. He reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. The gesture simple but meaningful. "We did this together," he said quietly. "You were as much a part of this as I was. Don't forget that." Siren's heart swelled with something she couldn't name. She had never known this kind of bond, this kind of partnership. She had always fought alone, always kept her distance, always stayed hidden behind walls she built to protect herself. But now, those walls were starting to crumble. She felt it. She felt the connection between them. A connection that had been growing from the moment they first met. "I won't forget," she whispered. The soldier nodded, And for a moment, they just stood there, letting the peace of the moment wash over them. There was no more running, no more fighting. They had survived, together. As they walked away from the facility, the sun rising higher in the sky, Saren knew that their journey wasn't over. There would still be challenges ahead, still battles to fight. But now she knew she wasn't alone. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe she had found a new kind of strength, a strength that came not from her fists, but from the people she had come to trust, from the soldier who had shown her that survival was about more than just fighting. It was about finding someone to fight for, together.